Welcome, dear soul. It is not by chance that you are here at this very moment. You have arrived in a sacred space of faith, hope, and quiet trust, where hearts come together to seek comfort and miracles through prayer. Welcome to Timeless Prayer. Today, we gather with one purpose: to place our needs, our worries, and our deepest desires into the loving hands of St Anthony of Padua, a powerful intercessor and faithful servant of God. If your heart feels heavy, if you are searching for answers, or if you are longing for a miracle that seems just out of reach, know that you are not alone. Life often brings moments of confusion, loss, and silent pain. Moments when words fail and hope feels fragile. Yet it is precisely in these moments that prayer becomes our refuge and our strength. St. Anthony is known throughout the world as a saint of compassion, a helper in times of need, and a guide for those who feel lost. Countless faithful have turned to him in moments of desperation and found peace, clarity, and unexpected blessings. Tonight, or in the quiet stillness of the early morning, you are invited to do the same. There is something deeply sacred about the hour of 3 peace, a moment when the world is quiet. Distractions fade, and the soul speaks more clearly. It is an hour many believe heaven listens more closely, when divine grace flows gently into the hearts of those who pray with faith. In this peaceful hour, your prayer can rise freely, carried by trust, humility, and hope. As you prepare to pray this powerful prayer to St. Anthony of Padua, allow yourself to breathe deeply and let go of fear. You do not need perfect words or complete understanding. All that is needed is an open heart and a willingness to trust. St. Anthony understands your struggles, your tears, and even the prayers you cannot fully express. Take this moment as a gift. Let it be a pause from worry, a quiet meeting between your soul and God's mercy. Whether you are asking for healing, guidance, reconciliation, or an urgent miracle, place it gently before St. Anthony. Believe that your prayer is heard, that you are seen, and that help is already on its way. Now, with faith and calm assurance, let us begin this prayer together, trusting that at 3 miracles are possible, hope is renewed, and grace finds its way into your life. Before we go any further, take a moment just for yourself. This is not a moment to rush, and it is not a moment that demands answers. It is simply a pause, a quiet space where you are allowed to feel exactly what you are feeling right now. Perhaps you arrived here carrying a weight you cannot fully explain. Perhaps your heart feels tired, uncertain, or quietly longing for something to change. Whatever brought you here, it matters. Sometimes we'd reach for prayer not because we are strong, but because we are exhausted from trying to be strong for too long. We come with questions we don't know how to ask, with worries we've kept to ourselves, and with hopes we're afraid to speak out loud. There are moments when life feels overwhelming, when the night feels long, and when silence is the only place where we can finally breathe. If this is where you find yourself now, know that you are not alone in this moment. This prayer is not about perfection or having everything figured out. It is about honesty. It is about allowing your heart to be seen, even in its weakness. Before we place any requests before God, before we speak of miracles or sacred hours, we begin by acknowledging the human heart, your heart, exactly as it is. Tired, hopeful, wounded, waiting, there is no need to hide any of it here. In moments like these, many of us instinctively seek someone who understands suffering, someone who knows what it means to trust God even when the path is unclear. We look for a gentle presence, a guide who feels close rather than distant, compassionate rather than demanding. This is why, in the quiet of this moment, We now turn our attention to St Anthony of Padua, not as a distant figure from the past, but as a companion for those who are searching, waiting, and hoping for light. St Anthony of Padua, beloved servant of God and gentle guide of countless hearts, we come before you with humility and trust. For centuries, people from every walk of life have turned to you in moments of loss, confusion, sorrow, and urgent need. They have whispered your name in quiet rooms, cried out to you in the depths of the night, and placed their hopes in your loving intercession. And time after time, they have found comfort, clarity, and miracles where none seemed possible. St. Anthony, you are known not only as a great preacher and teacher, but as a saint who truly understood the human heart. You knew what it meant to struggle, to search, and to rely completely on God's grace. Your life was marked by humility, simplicity, and deep compassion for those who suffered. You did not turn away from the broken, the lost, or the forgotten. Instead, you welcomed them, listened to them, and lifted them up with love. So many call you the saint who helps us find what is lost. And while the world often speaks of lost objects, we know that you help us find much more than that. You help us find lost hope when discouragement weighs us down. You help us find lost faith when doubt creeps into our hearts. You help us find lost peace when our minds are restless and our souls feel overwhelmed. You understand that what we seek most is not always something we can hold in our hands, but something we carry deep within our hearts. St. Anthony, you are close to those who feel unheard and unseen. You draw near to those who are weary from waiting, tired of praying, and afraid of being disappointed once again. You know the silent battles we fight, the worries we carry into the night, and the questions that linger without answers. In your gentle presence, many have found reassurance that God has not abandoned them, that their prayers matter, and that grace is at work even when they cannot yet see it. Your miracles are not only signs of God's power, but reflections of God's tenderness. Through your intercession, broken relationships have been healed. Hearts burdened by anxiety have found calm, and lives weighed down by hardship have been renewed with hope. These miracles remind us that God is attentive, that He listens, and that He acts through those who have surrendered their lives completely to His will, just as you did. St. Anthony, your love for the poor and the suffering continues to inspire us today. You did not seek greatness or recognition. Instead, you chose a path of service, obedience, and trust. You believed that God works most powerfully through humility, and that even the smallest act of faith can open the door to great blessings. This is why so many feel close to you. Not because you seem distant or unreachable, but because you feel like a friend, a brother, a companion on the journey of faith. As we honor you in this prayer, we remember that your strength came not from yourself, but from your deep union with God. You trusted Him completely, even when the path ahead was uncertain. You believed that God's plans were greater than your own understanding, and you surrendered your life to His divine purpose. Through this surrender, your prayers became powerful, your words became healing, and your presence became a source of peace for all who encountered you. St. Anthony, you know that many of us come to this prayer carrying heavy hearts. Some of us are waiting for answers. Some are seeking healing, physical, emotional, or spiritual. Some are longing for reconciliation, guidance, or a miracle that feels desperately needed. We come to you not because we have all the answers, but because we trust that you will walk with us as we seek them. You remind us that faith does not mean having no doubts, but choosing to trust even when doubts arise. You teach us that prayer is not about perfect words, but about an honest heart. You show us that miracles often begin quietly, in moments of surrender, patience, and hope. Through your example, we learn that God's grace flows most freely when we open ourselves fully to Him, in honoring you, St. Anthony. We also renew our own desire to live with faith, compassion, and trust. We ask for your help not only in receiving miracles, but in becoming people who reflect God's love to others. Teach us to be patient in waiting, gentle in suffering, and steadfast in hope. Help us to believe that no prayer is ever wasted, and that God is always working for our good, even when the outcome is different from what we expect. St. Anthony of Padua, faithful servant of God and loving intercessor, we place our trust in you as we continue this prayer. Stand with us in this sacred moment, especially in the quiet hour of 3 a.m., when hearts are open and souls listen more deeply. Carry our intentions before God with your gentle strength and unwavering faith. And as we move forward in this prayer, help us to believe, with calm assurance, that miracles are possible. Hope is alive, and God's grace is already at work in our lives. There are parts of our lives that we rarely share with anyone, not because they are insignificant, but because they are too heavy, too personal, or too difficult to put into words. These are the thoughts that surface late at night, the worries that return when the world grows quiet, the feelings we carry silently while continuing to show up for everyone else. In moments like these, we often realize just how much we have been holding inside. Many people move through life appearing strong, capable, and composed, while inwardly feeling uncertain, exhausted, or overwhelmed. Pain does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it settles in quietly, becoming a constant presence in the background of our days. It may come from loss, disappointment, fear of the future, or unanswered questions that linger in the heart. And over time, carrying these unspoken burdens can leave us feeling isolated, even when we are surrounded by others. In this moment, there is no need to minimize what you are feeling. Your struggles do not have to meet a certain standard to be valid. What weighs on your heart matters, even if others might not fully understand it. The emotions you carry, sadness, confusion, longing, regret, hope, are all part of your human experience. Allowing yourself to acknowledge them is not a sign of weakness, but an act of courage. There is something deeply meaningful about silence when it is chosen rather than forced. In silence, we are no longer distracted by expectations or the need to explain ourselves. We can simply exist as we are. This is where the heart begins to speak honestly, not in complete sentences, but in feelings, memories, and quiet realizations. It is here that we start to recognize what we truly need, even if we are not yet ready to name it. Some of us are carrying pain that has been present for a long time. Perhaps it comes from a broken relationship, a missed opportunity, or a season of life that did not unfold as we hoped. Perhaps it is rooted in uncertainty, waiting for answers that have not yet come, or fearing an outcome we cannot control. Waiting can be one of the hardest forms of suffering, especially when it feels endless and unresolved. Others may be holding on to guilt or regret, replaying moments they wish they could change. These thoughts can quietly shape how we see ourselves, making it difficult to move forward with confidence or peace. Over time, they can create a sense of heaviness that affects not only our thoughts, but also our spirit. Acknowledging this weight is the first step toward releasing it. There are also those who carry concern for others, family members, loved ones, or situations beyond their control. Loving deeply often means worrying deeply. The desire to protect, to help, or to fix what feels broken can become overwhelming when solutions are not within reach. This kind of emotional burden is often invisible, yet profoundly exhausting. In moments like this, we are reminded that we were never meant to carry everything alone. The human heart has limits, and recognizing those limits is not a failure. It is an invitation to rest, to reflect, and to seek comfort beyond ourselves. Even without words, simply acknowledging that we need support can be a powerful and healing act. As we sit with our own thoughts and emotions, it becomes clear that what we long for most is not always a specific outcome, but a sense of peace. We want reassurance that our struggles are seen, that our efforts matter, and that our pain has meaning. We want to believe that there is purpose even in the waiting, and that something good can still emerge from what feels unresolved. This quiet reflection prepares the heart for what comes next. It creates space, not for immediate solutions, but for trust to begin forming. When we allow ourselves to be honest in silence, we open the door to deeper faith. Even if that faith feels fragile, we begin to understand that miracles do not always arrive suddenly or dramatically. Sometimes they begin as a subtle shift within us, a softening, a release, a renewed sense of hope. By acknowledging our personal pain without judgment, we give ourselves permission to move forward gently. We stop demanding instant answers and instead allow ourselves to be present in the moment. This presence becomes the foundation upon which faith can grow, not as certainty, but as quiet confidence that we are not alone on this journey. As we continue, carrying both our burdens and our hopes, we do so with greater awareness of what truly matters. The heart, once acknowledged, becomes ready to listen. And in that readiness, we prepare ourselves for the deeper meaning of the sacred hour ahead, where silence, faith, and trust come together in ways we may not yet fully understand. As we acknowledge the weight we carry within, something subtle begins to shift. When pain is no longer hidden or denied, the heart naturally seeks quiet, not the silence that feels empty or lonely, but the kind that feels intentional, chosen. It is in this quiet that time seems to slow, and awareness deepens. This is where the night gently invites us into a space that feels different from the rest of the day. A space where the world sleeps, and the soul remains awake. There is a unique stillness that exists in the early hours of the morning, especially around 3 a.m. It is a stillness unlike any other time of day. The noise of the world fades. Expectations loosen their grip. Responsibilities pause. In this hour, the mind is less guarded, and the heart speaks more honestly. For many, it is not a chosen moment, but one they arrive at naturally, awake not by alarm, but by thought, memory, or longing. At 3 a.m., the world feels distant, as though it has stepped back to make room for something quieter and deeper. Streets are empty, lights are dim, and conversations fall silent. It is in this emptiness that many find themselves face to face with their true thoughts. There is no audience, no pressure to perform, no need to explain, only presence, only awareness, only the gentle unfolding of what has been waiting to be felt. For some, this hour carries a sense of vulnerability. Sleep has lifted its protective veil, and emotions surface more freely. Worries that were manageable during the day may feel heavier, more persistent. Questions that were easy to ignore return with clarity. Yet within this vulnerability lies something sacred. When distractions are gone, the soul becomes more receptive. The heart listens more closely, and faith, even when fragile, becomes more honest. Many traditions speak of early morning hours as moments of spiritual openness, not because the time itself is magical, but because the human spirit is more available. At 3 a.m., we are less defended, less hurried, and less influenced by the expectations of others. This openness creates space for reflection, surrender, and trust to quietly take root. There is also a sense of humility that comes with this hour. We are reminded of our smallness, of our limits, of how little control we truly have. The night strips away illusions of certainty and leaves us with what is real. And in that realization, something profound happens. We stop trying to force answers and begin to allow them to come in their own time. For many people, 3 a.m. is not an hour of despair, but an hour of awakening. It is the moment when the heart recognizes its need for something greater than itself. Not necessarily solutions, but reassurance. Not immediate change, but presence. In this quiet hour, longing becomes clearer, not just longing for outcomes, but longing for peace, understanding, and rest for the soul. This hour also teaches patience. The night does not rush into morning. Darkness does not disappear all at once. Instead, light arrives slowly, almost unnoticed at first. In the same way, clarity and healing often come gradually. At 3A, we are reminded that waiting is not wasted time. It is part of the process, a necessary space where growth begins quietly, beneath the surface. There is something deeply personal about being awake while the world sleeps. It can feel lonely at times, but it can also feel intimate, as though the moment belongs only to you. In this solitude, thoughts are no longer interrupted, feelings are no longer postponed, and faith, stripped of formality, becomes something raw and sincere. Many who find themselves awake at this hour describe a sense of closeness to their own hearts, to memories long forgotten, and to a presence that feels gentle rather than overwhelming. It is not always comforting at first. Sometimes it brings tears. Sometimes it brings restlessness. But over time, it often brings understanding. The kind that does not answer every question, but makes the questions easier to carry. At 3A, time feels suspended. Past regrets, present worries, and future fears seem to exist in the same quiet space. And yet, within that space, there is also possibility. The possibility of release, the possibility of renewed hope, the possibility that something unseen is at work, even when nothing outward appears to be changing. This hour invites us to listen rather than speak, to feel rather than explain, to trust rather than control. It asks nothing of us except honesty and openness. In its stillness, we are gently reminded that not everything needs to be resolved immediately. Some things need only to be acknowledged, held, and entrusted to time and grace. As we sit with the meaning of this sacred hour, we begin to understand why so many associate it with transformation. Not because miracles always appear instantly, but because something within us begins to shift. The heart softens, resistance loosens, hope, though quiet, becomes steady. The hour of 3 a.m. stands as a threshold between night and morning, between fear and trust, between what is known and what is yet to come. And as we cross this threshold, carrying our burdens with greater awareness, we become more receptive to what lies ahead. Not rushed, not forced, simply open. This quiet readiness prepares us for the next step of the journey, where faith moves beyond reflection and begins to take form, where trust, shaped in silence, starts to reach outward, and where the sacred stillness of the night gives way to a deeper understanding of hope, grace, and the possibility of change. Dear friend, there comes a moment in every journey of faith when holding on becomes more exhausting than letting go. It is not the kind of letting go that means giving up, but the kind that means releasing the weight of constant worry, expectation, and fear. In the quiet awareness shaped by the night, many begin to recognize how tightly they have been clinging to outcomes, to timelines, to imagined solutions, and gently, almost instinctively, the heart begins to loosen its grip. Trust does not arrive suddenly or dramatically. It often emerges slowly, as a quiet willingness to stop resisting what cannot be controlled. It is not certainty. It is not the absence of fear. Rather, it is the choice to believe that even in uncertainty, we are being held by something greater than ourselves. In this space, trust feels less like an act of strength and more like an act of rest. To surrender is not to abandon hope, but to reshape it. Instead of hoping only for specific results, surrender invites us to hope for what is truly good, even if it arrives in an unexpected form. It asks us to consider that the miracle we seek may not always look the way we imagined, but may still bring healing, peace, or clarity in ways we did not anticipate. Many people hesitate at the idea of surrender because it feels vulnerable. Letting go of control can feel like stepping into the unknown. Yet, it is often in this vulnerability that the heart becomes most open to transformation. When we stop trying to manage every outcome, we create space for grace to move freely. And grace, by its nature, works quietly, patiently, and with perfect timing. In this state of openness, the idea of a miracle shifts. It is no longer just about dramatic change or sudden resolution. A miracle may begin as a sense of calm where anxiety once lived. It may appear as renewed strength to face another day, or as unexpected clarity in a confusing situation. Sometimes, the miracle is the realization that we are not as alone as we once believed. Trust teaches us to wait without despair. Waiting, when shaped by trust, becomes an active posture rather than a passive one. It is a way of saying, I do not yet see the full picture, but I believe it is unfolding. This kind of waiting softens impatience and allows hope to remain alive, even when answers are delayed. There is also a quiet courage required to surrender expectations that no longer serve us. Expectations, while often rooted in hope, can become heavy when they are rigid. They can limit our ability to recognize blessings that arrive in unfamiliar forms. By loosening these expectations, we allow ourselves to receive what we truly need, not just what we think we want. At this stage of the journey, the heart begins to sense a shift, from striving to trusting, from asking to receiving, from fear to openness. It is not that problems disappear, but that our relationship with them changes. They no longer define us. They no longer consume every thought. Instead, they become part of a larger story, one that includes growth, resilience, and grace. Faith, in this sense, is not blind optimism. It is a deep inner knowing that life holds meaning beyond immediate understanding. It is the belief that even unanswered questions have a place, and that waiting does not mean being forgotten. This belief brings a quiet steadiness, a calm assurance that sustains the heart through uncertainty. As trust deepens, the idea of a miracle becomes less about timing and more about transformation. The heart becomes receptive, not only to change in circumstances, but to change within itself. This inner shift often marks the true beginning of healing. When the heart opens, it creates a path for peace to enter. Even before any outward change occurs, surrender also invites humility, the recognition that we do not have to carry everything on our own. It reminds us that seeking help, guidance, or comfort is not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of wisdom. In this humility, the heart becomes lighter, less burdened by the need to control what lies ahead. In the gentle space of trust, fear begins to loosen its hold. It does not vanish completely, but it loses its authority. Hope takes its place, not loud or demanding, but steady and resilient. This hope does not depend on guarantees. It is rooted in presence, patience, and the belief that something meaningful is already unfolding. As we remain in this posture of openness, we prepare ourselves for what comes next. The heart, now softened by reflection and trust, becomes ready to speak, not from desperation, but from confidence shaped by surrender. This readiness marks a turning point, where faith moves from contemplation into expression, and where the quiet possibility of a miracle begins to feel real. In this moment, nothing needs to be rushed. Trust grows at its own pace, surrender unfolds gently, and the heart, once heavy with expectation, now rests in the assurance that whatever lies ahead will arrive with purpose. This calm assurance becomes the foundation upon which the next step of the journey is built, one where faith, having been shaped in silence and trust, is ready to find its voice. After the heart has learned to loosen its grip and rest in trust, a different kind of strength begins to emerge. It is no longer the strength that pushes forward or demands change, but the strength that comes from calm assurance. Having released the need to control every outcome, the soul now enters a gentler space, one where waiting no longer feels like emptiness, but like quiet preparation. This is where faith settles, not as urgency, but as peace. There is a profound difference between waiting with fear and waiting with trust. Fear-filled waiting is tense, restless, and exhausting. It constantly asks how long, why, and what if. Trust-filled waiting, however, carries a different energy. It is patient without being passive, hopeful without being demanding. It rests in the belief that something meaningful is unfolding, even if it cannot yet be seen. At this stage of the journey, the heart begins to realize that faith does not require constant reassurance. It does not need repeated signs or immediate answers to remain alive. Faith, when nurtured by trust, becomes steady. It breathes calmly. It remains present. And most importantly, it brings peace. Not because everything is resolved, but because the heart has learned where to rest. Waiting in peace does not mean ignoring pain or pretending that everything is fine. It means allowing pain to exist without letting it define every thought or emotion. It means acknowledging uncertainty while refusing to be consumed by it. In this way, waiting becomes an act of quiet courage, a decision to remain open rather than closed, hopeful rather than hardened. There is also a deep freedom that comes with this kind of waiting. When we stop measuring our faith by outcomes, we free ourselves from constant disappointment. We learn to recognize small signs of grace, moments of calm, clarity, or strength that might have gone unnoticed before. These moments may not be dramatic, but they are meaningful. They remind us that we are being sustained. Even in the absence of visible change, peaceful waiting teaches us to trust timing, even when it challenges our patience. It reminds us that not everything unfolds according to our schedules, and that delay does not equal denial. Often, what feels like waiting is actually a season of quiet preparation, shaping the heart for what is to come. Growth, understanding, and healing often take place beneath the surface, unseen but deeply transformative. In this space of calm assurance, gratitude begins to emerge naturally. Not gratitude for answers that have already arrived, but gratitude for the strength to continue, for the clarity gained along the way, and for the sense of presence that replaces loneliness. Gratitude becomes less about circumstances and more about awareness, an awareness that we are not abandoned, even in uncertainty. As faith settles into this peaceful rhythm, the heart becomes more resilient. Challenges no longer feel like proof of failure or lack of faith. Instead, they are understood as part of a larger journey, one that includes growth, learning, and deepening trust. This resilience does not eliminate struggle, but it changes how struggle is experienced. It becomes something we move through, rather than something that defines us. Waiting in peace also reshapes how we view miracles. Instead of seeing them only as sudden, dramatic events, we begin to recognize them in quieter forms: a softened heart, a renewed sense of purpose, the ability to rest at night without overwhelming fear, the courage to face tomorrow with steadiness rather than dread. These, too, are miracles, often overlooked but deeply significant. In this final stage, faith becomes less about striving and more about abiding. It is no longer fueled by urgency, but by trust. The heart learns to dwell in hope without anxiety, to believe without forcing, and to remain open without exhaustion. This abiding faith creates a foundation strong enough to hold both expectation and acceptance. There is a gentle confidence that arises here, a confidence not rooted in guarantees, but in relationship. It is the confidence that comes from knowing where to turn, where to rest, and where to place one's trust. This confidence does not eliminate questions, but it makes them less frightening. It allows uncertainty to exist without overpowering peace. As we remain in this posture of calm trust, we begin to understand that waiting itself can be sacred. It can be a space where faith deepens, character strengthens, and the heart grows more compassionate toward others and toward itself. In this waiting, we learn patience not as endurance, but as openness, not as resistance, but as readiness. This readiness does not demand that tomorrow be different. It simply trusts that whatever tomorrow brings, we will not face it alone. And in that assurance, peace becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a steady presence, accompanying us through each moment. Here, at the close of this reflection, the heart stands quietly grounded, not rushed, not anxious, simply present. Faith has been affirmed, not through certainty, but through trust. Hope remains alive, not because answers are guaranteed, but because peace has taken root. And in this peaceful waiting, the journey continues, no longer driven by fear or urgency, but guided by calm assurance and quiet confidence. Whatever unfolds next will do so in its time. Until then, the heart rests, trusting that grace is at work, and that what is meant to arrive will come gently, purposefully, and with meaning. As we come to the end of this reflection, take a moment to notice how your heart feels now. There is no need to rush forward or look for immediate signs. What matters is that you have allowed yourself to pause, to reflect, and to open your heart with honesty. In a world that constantly pushes us to move faster and carry more, choosing to stop and sit quietly with faith is already a meaningful act. If you have stayed until this moment, it is because something within you is seeking peace, reassurance, or renewal. That desire is not random, and it is not unnoticed. Every moment of quiet trust, every breath taken with hope, carries meaning, even when answers are not yet clear. This time you have given to reflection, and faith has value. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing this space to be part of your journey. Whether you are listening in the stillness of the night or returning to this prayer at another time, your presence matters, your faith matters, and the intentions you carry in your heart are worthy of care and compassion. If this reflection has brought you even a small sense of calm or connection, I invite you to support this space by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. These simple actions help keep this place of prayer and reflection available for others who may be searching for comfort, just as you are. You are also warmly invited to share this video with someone you love, someone who may need a moment of peace, encouragement, or hope. If you feel comfortable, you may write your prayer intentions in the comments. There is power in naming what weighs on the heart, and there is comfort in knowing that others may hold those intentions with you. You are not alone in your waiting, and you do not have to carry everything by yourself. Now, as we prepare to move into the prayer itself, allow your heart to remain open and gentle. There is no pressure to say the perfect words or to feel a certain way. Simply be present. Let the calm you have found here carry you forward. In this next moment, we will lift our hearts in prayer, trusting in the compassionate intercession of St. Anthony of Padua, and believing that even in the quiet hour of 3A, grace is near, hope is alive, and miracles, both seen and unseen, are possible. Let us now enter this prayer together. St. Anthony of Padua, gentle servant of God and faithful friend to those who seek help, I come into this moment with a quiet heart. In the stillness of this hour, I set aside distractions and allow my soul to rest. I may not have all the words, and I may not fully understand what lies ahead, but I come with trust, humility, and hope. You know, St. Anthony, the many thoughts that fill my mind and the emotions that weigh on my heart. You see the concerns I carry silently and the worries I try to hide during the day. In this sacred moment, I place them gently before God, believing that nothing is too small, too broken, or too uncertain to be touched by grace. St. Anthony, you who knew the power of surrender and the peace that comes from trusting completely in God, help me to let go of fear. Help me release the need to control outcomes I cannot change. Teach me to rest in the assurance that God's love surrounds me, even when the path forward feels unclear. In this quiet hour, I bring before you all that troubles me, the unanswered questions, the situations that feel unresolved, the hopes that feel delayed, the pain that lingers longer than I expected. I do not come demanding solutions, but seeking peace, guidance, and strength to continue. St. Anthony, compassionate intercessor, you understand the human heart. You know what it means to wait, to trust, and to believe even when circumstances are difficult. Walk with me now as I place my life, my worries, and my desires into God's hands. I ask you to help me trust more deeply, not only when things are easy, but especially when they are hard. When doubt whispers, remind me of hope. When fear grows, remind me of faith. When my strength feels limited, remind me that I am never alone. St. Anthony, in this hour of stillness, I open my heart to the possibility of a miracle, not because I deserve it, but because God's mercy is infinite. I believe that miracles do not always come as sudden changes, but often as quiet transformations, renewed peace, unexpected clarity, restored strength, or the courage to face another day. If it is God's will, I humbly ask that the miracle I need be granted. You know the desire I carry deep within my heart. You know what I long for, what I hope for, and what I fear to lose. I place this intention before God now, trusting that whatever unfolds will be guided by love and wisdom beyond my understanding. St. Anthony, help me accept God's timing with patience. Teach me to wait without bitterness, to hope without anxiety, and to trust without conditions. Let this waiting become a space of growth rather than fear, a season of preparation rather than frustration. As this prayer rises in the quiet of the night, I ask for peace to settle within me. Calm my thoughts, ease my worries, quiet the restlessness that keeps me awake. Replace it with a gentle confidence that I am held, guided, and cared for. St. Anthony, protector of those who seek and servant of God's mercy, intercede for me. Present my intentions before the Lord with compassion and love. Ask that my heart be strengthened, my faith renewed, and my spirit restored. I pray for healing where there is pain, physical, emotional, or spiritual. I pray for clarity where there is confusion. I pray for comfort where there is sorrow. I pray for hope where there is discouragement. May God's grace touch every area of my life that feels fragile or uncertain. St. Anthony, Remind me that faith does not mean having all the answers. It means trusting even when answers are delayed. Help me to believe that God is at work in ways I cannot yet see, and that every moment of waiting has meaning. In this sacred hour of 3 a.m., I place my trust fully in God's care. I believe that this moment is not empty or wasted, but filled with quiet purpose. May my prayer rise gently, carried by faith, hope, and surrender. St. Anthony, walk with me through the days ahead. Help me recognize signs of grace, no matter how small. Teach me gratitude for what is already present, and patience for what is still unfolding. When fear returns, remind me of this moment of trust. When doubt arises, remind me of God's faithfulness. When I feel weak, remind me that strength often comes quietly, one step at a time. I offer this prayer not only for myself, but for all who are seeking peace, comfort, and hope in the quiet of the night. May every heart that prays at this hour feel seen, heard, and supported by God's love. St. Anthony of Padua, faithful intercessor and gentle guide, thank you for your presence, your compassion, and your constant care. Thank you for walking with those who seek help, and for reminding us that God's mercy is always near. I trust that this prayer has been heard. I trust that grace is at work. I trust that whatever unfolds next will do so with purpose, guided by love and shaped by divine wisdom. With a calm heart and steady faith, I surrender this moment, this prayer, and this life into God's hands. May peace remain with me through the night, and may hope greet me with the coming of a new day. Amen.